while going up and accelerating, the rocket failed. It started tumbling and it fell back to Earth from an altitude of 500 kilometers. And we were watching that, and I saw the launcher tumbling, and I thought, oh, this is just a glitch of telemetry. It was not.
You spent 20 years doing what most aerospace engineers dream of, designing flight paths for missions to Mars, Mercury, and comets. In 2023, you walked away from all of it, and you started a company from scratch in Madrid with your friend, building Reentry Capsules, something Spain had never done before.
I thought, okay, first thing is help the team not feel everything is lost. Then Bruno, one of our software engineers, went to check the telemetry, and he told us, oh, well, we have telemetry.
You have said, I want to make money, hopefully we'll get rich. Why do European founders feel guilty about that when Americans don't? What do you think?
Space is humanity's greatest laboratory. Defense is democracy's strongest shield. And today, in workshops, in laboratories, in startups, a new generation rises, not to observe history, but to write it, where every innovation above drives progress below, where every breakthrough in defense preserves our freedom to create. Behind every breakthrough stands a founder with a story. Now these stories emerge to light the path for those who follow. Welcome to Rockets and Radars.
Before we get into the history or story of Orbital Paradigm, if you can give us in a few sentences what actually Orbital Paradigm is for people that might not know you yet.
Sure. We are an in-space transportation company. Our goal is to provide space logistics services with the ability of coming back from space to Earth. Space logistics is all that, from a non-space nerd point of view. Space economy means you have to put things in space, and that is called access to space or launch. We don't do that. It's a very sexy thing to do for an engineer, but it's not us. But after that, there's a whole bunch of things to be done beyond observing and telecommunication, observing Earth and communicating for Earth. There's a lot of activities of transportation, refurbishment, maintenance of in-space infrastructure. Since we are where we are in history, there's also defense in space. And that's where we want to go. And we believe that to do that in a way that is really economically making sense, and that let's say that really to grasp all the value you can grasp there, you need to have vehicles that have the ability of being reused. And reusing a space vehicle means bringing it back to Earth and launching it again. So that's what's in our mind in a very broad sense. So let's say, even to simplify a bit more, when we discovered the Americas, the first thing was getting there. Now you can get there easily. The second step was moving through the Americas. So once you get to the Americas space, we want to take care of everything you do over there with the ability of coming back to Earth for reuse. That's more or less
so
it.
Taking things back that have been taking up, pretty good value proposition, and the in-orbit economy is just still in the early stage. So this is going to be huge in a couple of years from now on. Okay, great.
Let's hope
What
so.
I want to, yeah, I'm sure of that. I want to also understand the personal side of the story, which is who are you, or who is Francesco when he's not designing Reentry Capsules in the meantime?
I'm an engineer, a space engineer. I started 20 years ago in Spain. I ended up in Spain first I went there with my family when I was a teenager. I stayed 3 years, then went back to Rome, ended up in Spain for work. And I went, I'm from Rome, I'm Italian. I went to Spain just thinking, okay, well, it's a nice place, it's a nice job. And boom, it's 20 years later. So what do I do besides work when I'm not designing, when I'm not thinking of work, which is probably when I'm asleep, not even, and the rest 2 minutes a day. But I'm interested by sports, music, spending time with my girlfriend and my friends and the people I love in my life. But to be honest, work is a huge part of my life right now. But I'm really happy about it. I realized that what I'm doing really makes me feel I'm doing something of value
Worth.
with my work life, which is a very fulfilling feeling. And I think this is very similar for many founders, the up of thinking you're making something worth it. And then the many downs of all the things you have to deal with, the uncertainty, the problems you have, but the balance is very positive. So in the company, I'm the CEO and CTO. I would say I'm a CEO with a very big technical background, but my work is non-technical. I really like the space industry, even though at times it really annoys me. I
Okay.
think it's
How come?
very misunderstood. I think commercial space is widely misunderstood. Commercial space, it seems like we're using, we're now selling space stuff to the lay person, and it's not the case. Commercial space means now there is a very commercial way of providing services and products to the space economy, which includes a big chunk of what is called B2G, so selling to governments and institutions, which is great. It's a great business, but it's there. It's not that we forget about that immediately. So, space is inherently tied to strategic and political interests, which means you have to take that into account when you're building a business, which complicates things a lot, because in space, when you do hardware and upstream, it means it's very complex hardware. You have the access to space, so the launch barrier to start selling the things you want to sell or operating or the services. And you have to deal with all the fact that there is a lot of let's say, many times the end customer, when you start pulling the thread, the end customer of your customer of his customer, blah, blah, it's the government. So we can lie to ourselves and say it's not the case. It's the case. And it's not bad. It's just part of how it is. But at times, at times I wish I was in a vertical that was not so complex, but I guess it's also where the fun is. So
Yeah, thank you so much
yeah.
for the intro and perspectives here. And you nudged a bit about where you started, and I want to start the story right there. So, if we can go back a few years, if I'm correct, around 2001, when you're starting at the University of Rome, studying aerospace engineering, and what I wanted to understand is, did you always wanted to work in that industry, aerospace or space, or was there a moment at some point where you were like, oh, okay, I'm gonna dedicate myself into this?
That's a good question. So my dad's a military pilot, and I've always been around planes. I was thinking of doing that. Then at some point I started university, and I was like, do I want to do that or not? Let's try. I tried just in case. It worked to see what I would decide, and it didn't work. So life kind of decided for me. So I did university, and it was aerospace. Could have been aeronautics or space. I loved space part. I went through the space path, and I ended up in the space industry, and I really enjoyed it. So when I was a kid, I had astronauts and space games
Yeah.
and all that. I wasn't like the kid that says, "Oh, I only want to do space." There were a bunch of things that were interesting for me. Space, like astrophysics, astronauts, and all that, always had a fascination. I was always fascinated by that. But I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be a space engineer. It kind of,
Yeah,
it
life
happened.
evolves, right? Organically.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And
Cool.
I
Director.
think I'm really happy about what I professionally think it's a very nice industry, very peculiar one, and it's a very interesting one.
Oh yeah, by the way, when you mentioned that you spend most of your time working, we are both Europeans, so there's this topic of work-life balance. I totally agree with you here. Is that if your work gives you passion and it fulfills you, then just do it, right?
It's a good, so. I think work is work. Work is not must not be life. I think that if you found a startup or a company or call it whatever, and you think you want to work 9 to 5, it's not gonna work out. It's not that I think you have to work a lot. I think everyone is the same person can go through different phases in life. Different people have different ideas. I just, I think that if you create a company, there is a lot of work to be done, and it's extremely hard. So you have to be ready to work a lot. For this kind of company, at least. I love what I do. I struggle with many things because it's a hard thing to do. But I recently told someone something that when I said it, I hadn't said it before. When I did, made me very happy because I said, this is the time in my life in which I feel more like really myself as a professional. So I'm very happy about that. Despite how hard it is, it's really a great job, a great thing to do. And then I think I'm doing something that makes me feel that I'm pouring my life into something that has a meaning. And that's the thing I value most. So, for me, working a lot is not something that I feel that I do not unwillingly. I do it because it has a meaning for me. It fulfills me. So I devote the time to something that fulfills me. And maybe in a few years, let's see how our orbital paradigm goes. A few years, maybe I'll be fulfilled on my yacht. Maybe I will be fulfilled doing, selling ice cream. Who knows? I'll try to make it on the yacht. But the point is, things change in life. I'm really happy with this. I also think there must be a balance, because the duty of a founder is to do the best for the company, which requires keeping a good mental and physical health state, which requires taking care of yourself, which requires at times not only work. But the narrative, we have to work a lot. In Europe, we don't work, blah, 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 blah. If you want to do hard things, you need to put a lot of effort in that, and you have to keep your mental and physical health. But this is finding your own balance and rhythm. I just don't think you can find a chill 9 to 5 if you want to create a startup.
Thanks for addressing that, and let's move forward with your story. So right after the university, you started your space career in Deimos space in Madrid, and you spent there around 8 years working on major European missions like ABP Colombo, Rosetta, ExoMars, and I want to understand, what were those corporate years actually like, and which mission meant the most to you, and why? Just curious.
It's a good question. So corporate, or let's say more. So Deimos, when I started Deimos, it was already a well-established company. Then it became much bigger. But I was very lucky because I had people that taught me a lot. And I learned a lot from them. So I owe these people I still am in contact with, and some of them I kept working with afterwards. Some of them we have a personal relationship, but my bosses and friends and colleagues are people that went on in the industry, and I've learned a lot from them. So I think they were very different years. There was not a perception of the possibility of really creating startups or start companies in space doing big things like there is now. Now it's like, yeah, you can do it. Of course you can do it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the
back in the
barrier
day,
of
the
entry.
feeling.
Yep.
Yeah, back in the day, the feeling was more like, that, there's no way. Which is weird because Deimos itself was a company that was quite new. I entered in 2006 and was 5 years old. So, but it was more like, I think, more of a normal job. You go to work, they tell you you're in this project, this other project, blah, 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 and you have to do this and that. It was very good because I had the opportunity not only of producing, but learning a lot where producing work for others. And they were very nice years. I'm really happy. I would say the work has changed a lot. For instance, the speed with which an engineer goes from being considered a junior to a senior has changed a lot in the industry. Of course, somebody with 20 years of experience, the large majority of times will be way more capable and knowledgeable than somebody with 5 years of experience. But back in my time, my feeling is that with 5 years of experience, you were, he's a young kid, he's learning, and we can start giving him some responsibility. And now you have people that with 5 years of experience are leading major activities in commercial or institutional space industry. So things have changed. They were really good years. I'm really thankful. The mission I loved most, or is most, I think the most impactful in my life has been Euclid, because I did initially mission analysis and mapping activities for sky mapping activities for Euclid, and then
for people that might not know that mission, can you explain?
Yeah, so Euclid is the most accurate space telescope ever produced by Europe. It is a mission that is, let's put it explicitly, paid by ESA to Thales Alenia Space Italy in Turin. And it had many subcontractors, and it had Deimos as a subcontractor, and then it also had Sener as a subcontractor, the following company I worked for. And there was also Deimos in that contract because things are like that. And it's a mission that is now flying very successfully. It's a space telescope that has the purpose of mapping the sky, so the celestial sphere, and measuring the redshift gravitation, the distributions of galaxies and mass, and mapping the gravitational redshift in the universe. So the effect that light changes frequency when it moves close to a big mass, to demonstrate and validate certain aspects of some aspects of relativity theory, and try and map a distribution of dark matter in the universe. I am no scientist, okay? So if somebody hears these and thinks I have no clue, you're right, I have no clue. And it's a very, very accurate space telescope. It's only less accurate than the James Webb Space Telescope, which is as big as a tennis court, and it took probably 10 times more money. I don't know, I can't remember the figures right now, but I think Euclid costed around 750 million over 13 years.
Can be.
Ish. Maybe a little more, but that's the range. And I think, with James Webb, the range is billions, almost 20 years, I think it was. Maybe somebody can correct me in the comments. And it's very accurate. And I was lucky because I started working at Deimos on that. And then when I went to Sener, I worked on Euclid's AOCS, where I did all the navigation algorithms. And I also had the opportunity of learning a lot from the team at Sener, so also very grateful. I met my co-founder Victor there, and it went on to fly very successfully. And then another mission I loved is ExoMars, because, come on, recent graduate in engineering, space engineering, working on a Mars mission. How sexy is that? Didn't work so well, unfortunately. I was part of the mission analysis team. But okay, we will have more shots, and that's life.
No, cool stuff. And you mentioned Sener as your next employer before you started Orbital Paradigm. And what I want to understand, what's changed after 8 years of being in Deimos, and what made you to do the step of changing your employer?
Yeah, so these happened both with Sener and Deimos. I was very happy of how they treated me, but I felt I wanted to try different things with Deimos. At that moment in their company history, Deimos was mainly focused on activities in the initial phases of a mission, what
Yeah.
is called already from phase 0 to phase B1, so before doing real hardware. This is a simplification because then Deimos had the part in which they procured, operate, and worked on integration of their own satellite. They did a lot of things. The part of the company in which I was, which is what I was doing, were more focused on initial phases. And normally at that time, Deimos was still growing, and it still hadn't become as established as it was before becoming Indra, or as it is today. So it was harder to work on a real, on a more advanced phase, on an actually implemented mission. And I wanted to do that. And Sener did that with the Euclid AOCS. They needed somebody who knew a bit about some navigation things. I had worked on navigation at Deimos. I also had worked on optimization guidance and stuff like that, mission analysis. So it was that was the reason why.
And if there are any people listening here that are, let's say, working at Airbus, Deimos, Leonardo, or any other players out there in Europe, what would be your advice to them based on your personal experience? When do they actually should think more about changing their gears and trying something else, either starting a company or getting into another organization?
It's a hard question. But I think, so my perspective is always, when you're not growing as you like to grow, when you're not feeling challenged anymore, when you want to grow in a different direction. It can be, I don't want to be a space engineer anymore. I want to do different things. When you feel like you're not learning, that's the time to change. I realized in Europe, and especially I think my generation, my feeling is that in Southern Europe, especially, we have this idea that successful work life means you're a manager, and you can be a manager of anything. You can be a manager of a stairwell manager, whatever
It's the
manager,
manager, yeah.
which is putting the work happiness not in what you do or what you produce, but on a title and a label that you can put on your desktop, which is a great way, in my opinion, of being unhappy. Because then you get there and it's like, now what? Now I'm a manager of whatever, and do I like what I do? Do I enjoy what I do, or am I paid so much that I don't care how much I like it? Because then, I have a life outside, and what I do whatever I want to do. But if this is not the case, so if you're not paid so much that all the rest doesn't matter, or even if you're paid well, but you feel something inside and you're not happy, being a
Empathy.
manager of something doesn't work. So for young people in a corporate, I would say, do not put your faith in your work happiness in climbing a ladder based on titles, because it doesn't work. Do things that make you feel that you have a purpose, that make you feel useful, that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So
thank you for sharing this. This is, even though it's very individualistic, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
I think this is a very good overview over your thinking. So thanks for sharing
it's
that.
it's an opinion,
and
nothing more.
yeah, one last thing I want to explore from your tenure at Deimos and Sener is, were there any things you took from those two jobs that helped you as a founder directly outside of developing your technical skills, of course?
Oh yes, a lot. First, we're in Europe. We deal with ESA, and learning how ESA functions, and how to position yourself as a professional or a company within what CISA. It takes time, takes experience, and I got that from the people that mentored me in a way. I learned what it means to organize work and projects and people. One of the a thing that I constantly repeat. I've seen many project management issues due to the fact that if you don't provide clarity to the people you work with on what has to be done and why, the rest doesn't matter. People will start, the project will start failing, because even if people work, they will work not in the right direction, not together, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of project management activity and learning besides the technical one. I would say I have learned what it means to keep things organized in a professional setting. I would say, not be managing a team. I had to manage teams, do commercial proposals. So a lot of things beyond technical skills that I think had a major role in how our company is going now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very curious, if you didn't have those two jobs in your past, would you be able to start Orbital Paradigm and get to where you are right now? And why I'm asking, if there are any ambitious engineers that just ended university, would you recommend them to go straight into the founder shoes, or would you recommend them to have a year or two in the established companies like you did?
I would say I have no advice in that sense. I think you can have zero experience and make it. You can have a ton of experience and not make it. If you have some experience, you can get some useful things from that. If you don't, you still can learn. There are many successful founders and companies on the track of progressing successfully, that just, they started straight out of university. So I would not dismiss people that have no experience in the industry before. I would value people that have experience in the industry. It's two different things. So I would say having experience is clearly, in my opinion, a big plus. But not having experience is not a minus. It means just, they will have different
Great.
things. It's different.
No, thanks for sharing, and hope this will push more people to get into the industry the direct way of starting. Hope we get some new minds here. Okay, great. And before we get into the founding of your company, what is super interesting, during your tenure at Sener, you enrolled at an executive MBA program. And I want to understand why during your job you started school, in other words.
Okay, so first of all, I really enjoy learning. So even when I was working at Deimos and Sener, I studied a lot. I studied a lot of the technical stuff that I like. I really enjoy optimization, for instance. So I studied optimization books because I like them. I really enjoyed studying navigation, and it was part of the work I had to do. But I have a library of books that I read because I was learning, and I really loved it. And at some point, it's all connected to why I started the company. I had a bit of a health life crisis at some point. I was growing frustrated with things in the traditional space industry. And what I realize now is that I always say the same thing. It feels much like a significant other. You're with someone, and at some point you realize that there are things in that someone that you don't like anymore. But that someone hasn't changed. You have changed. So there's two options. Either you accept the other person as it is and just go on, or you say, okay, this is not for me anymore, and you make a hard decision and change. But you cannot ask others to change. And with companies, it's very similar. Established companies have a DNA. They are something, they do something in a certain way. And it is extremely hard to ask a company to change. mainly because Sener is a successful company, and some things in Sener for me were a bit frustrating. Not because the company is bad, because I was, I wanted to learn new things. So I got at some point in my life, some things happened altogether. I got a very good work offer at a very successful company. I made the mistake of saying yes, then huge crisis in my life, and then I said no, and I still feel bad about that.
What was the company name?
Won't say.
Okay.
But I would say they've been very kind. And then I had a huge crisis in my life. I felt like shit for months. And I remember somebody in my team at Sener came to me and said, "Are you okay? You don't look like okay." So they were really, everyone was really kind to me, but even my bosses. But basically, I had some personal stuff that I thought, no, this person is not going to go to work. And no, it was a shit show. But that was really good in the end because I felt really bad. And then at the other side of that, I realized, I really want to try and create something myself. I think we're in the moment in which I saw things happening and I saw the industry changing, and I saw opportunities, and I felt like I was watching life from the bench, and I that was something that frustrated me a lot. And I realized that's what I want to do. So I tried different ways. I started working on what today is Orbital Paradigm. I said, maybe I want to learn about, how to manage a company. And I thought that an MBA was a good idea. Spoiler, it was not. I think an MBA, I don't know if you have an MBA, Martin. If you have an MBA, I have an MBA. I will speak about myself. Not so useful. I think an MBA
I tried and I had the same reflection, but during the programs I quit. So yeah.
Well done. Lots of money and time wouldn't repeat the experience. But I would say, so an MBA is something that was invented a few years ago, like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, what is in the 70s, so 50 years ago, because it was a way of giving business education when it was harder to get that business education, and basically uplifts a layer of people in corporate jobs to understand how management works and puts you on a track on managing an established company. But it feels very performative. It doesn't feel real. And I would say 3 months as a startup, life punches you in the face 20, 30 times, and you realize, okay, I remember at some point things overlapped. I was working on Orbital Paradigm before it became Orbital Paradigm, and doing the MBA. And I finalized the MBA when the company had already started. And at some point, I asked a professor, so I need to take I need to take a decision, and it's about A or B and blah, blah, blah. And this professor said, yeah, of course. Clearly, what you have to do is you call the board and directors, and you launch a study, and you do the pestle analysis and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I was like, what? It's not real life. If you're already at that point, it's not a pestle analysis going to save your life. And if you read about corporate story, big decisions are never taken diluting personal responsibility. It's not about, a committee decides, blah, blah, blah. There's always somebody who has to take a strong decision and give a direction to companies. And nobody teaches you that. But that's an opinion again. So
there is
don't do an
one
MBA,
thing
kids.
Good advice. But there's this one taboo in the space industry is a lot of engineers I talk with that haven't started companies, even though they do want to. They told me, I don't know anything about business, right? So if the MBA is not the right path, what would you tell them to get ready, prepare, or maybe it doesn't matter, right? I really want to get an opinion of an engineer like yourself here to spread the word.
Okay, cool. So I think you do need to have a mind that thinks of business. if you don't have a mind to think of business, you will end up doing some super nice fancy tech that nobody needs, and it doesn't work, and you will manage badly your resources, and it will work. So you need that. So either you find a co-founder that does that, or you learn how to do that yourself. So I would say Google it. Google, the basics. Study the basics. There's really, when you're doing an MBA, some dude will come and will tell you things that you can find on Google. So you can do one of those remote MBAs that costs 500 euros and get the ropes. But basically, it's really thinking some very simple things like, what do I want to build? How many of those can I sell? What it costs to build one? How much R&D do I need to do to build one? How do I distribute resources over the years? How many people do I need to do to build that thing and sell it? Have I spoken to somebody who might want to buy it and understand? It's surprisingly so. Some basic things are kind of not so complex to think of. Then, of course, when you want to get into managing correctly finances, when you get to the point in which you have to think of finances in the right way, you would hire somebody to do that, because I don't think that's a CEO job. I don't think it's a CFO job. So somebody will have a CFO. We don't have a CFO at the moment. We have people that help us. I kind of manage basics. Victor, my co-founder, is also has an MBA, and he knows how to do a bunch of that. But it's not what you need to start a company.
No,
and
very good.
and I would think there are many solutions, but you need to think about the economic side of what you want to sell,
and not just polish a product which you love, right? And nobody wants to buy. Okay, great. This is
Exactly.
great. We just broken another barrier for new people to get into the industry. So if anybody listening here, just get into it and learn as you go, as you just said.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if somebody at some point thinks I can help and tell them how I did it, I don't think I'm a huge example. I think one of the many that are trying to make it work. But if I can help someone, just write to me, and I'm happy to answer.
Yep. You can find Francesco on LinkedIn, I suppose, and they can text you, I guess. Yeah. Okay, great. Let's get back into the main story. So you mentioned the breakdown or a revelation that you want to do something else, that you want to start something by yourself. And once you got into the point of starting a company, you mentioned Victor, now you're a co-founder, a few times. How did he came into the picture? You mentioned you met him already in Sener, if I remember right?
Yeah.
But how he came into the picture of joining you as a co-founder?
Yeah. So I had this push that I wanted to transform into creating a company. I spoke to a couple of people, and there were actually a couple more people involved in this at the beginning, but then it didn't go through. But Victor and myself, we met my second day at Sener, first day at Sener, working on Euclid. We're in the same team. He's really a nice and welcoming person. So we became colleagues, and then we became friends. And he then left Sener. He went to the Orbit, and at some point he also had this idea of making something by himself, which is why he did his own MBA. And he said, okay, I'm going to start working as an engineering consultant, and he started working at ASC Clyde as engineering consultant with his own consultancy, and he wanted to do that. So when I wrote, hey Vic, do you want to do this? I said yes, let's do it, because he wanted to do that as well, and he had some experience in what it means to set up a company legally, manage a bit of that, so he was not afraid by that, and it just went like that, and we have a picture of the founding day of the day we signed the notary papers, and I'd say we were very happy, naively happy, and now we have some battle scars. There's many more to get, I hope. Still happy that we're doing that, and whatever. I'm really thankful because we compensate personality-wise each other very well. I am I always think of somebody said I have a good mind for operations, because I always think of the worst possible things that can happen and start building plan A, B, C, D in my mind. And he's always like, hey, no, this is going to go well. Don't worry too much. Let's do this and that and go for it. So that compensates quite a lot. He knows how to put me limits, which I really appreciate. And we split very well things. And he's somebody we speak a lot, and we tell each other, hey, you did this. I don't think it's good. Be careful. Or I don't like these. I don't agree with you with this. And I think that's very important in a co-founder. The ability of telling each other the bad is probably healthier in the long run than the ability of telling each other the good, because that you can get anywhere. And sometimes it's disagree and commit, but the relationship is very open, and I really value that.
And if Victor didn't exist, let's say in a parallel universe, how would you approach finding a co-founder based on everything that you know now? Very hard question.
No clue. I have no clue. It feels really scary. So founding a company means facing things that are really, really hard. Business-wise, technology-wise, and emotionally-wise, personally-wise. And it's really worth it, and it's really fun, because for me, solving problems is what pushes me, so I really enjoy that. But you need to have somebody working with you, people working with you, that you can really, 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 really trust. That will always be a plus, never something, they never have to be a problem. Meaning, sometimes you will disagree, sometimes things they do won't work, sometimes things will happen, but that's nice. That's life, sorry. They should not start undermining you and the company you together are building. So that's really, really hard. And then you have to be complementary. If you're the same, the company won't work. So it is very complex. Normally, I would say ex-colleagues or colleagues that you know quite well.
Yeah, people around you.
People that you've already seen in complex situations or under pressure, and people you can happily spend a lot of time with. I was reading some expert guru and all that said, don't found companies with somebody you wouldn't hug, because that is it's funny, but it's basically a way of your brain of telling you that there's compatibility with that person, because you feel kind of safe, something like that. I don't know if it's true, but I do believe in that vibe, that it needs to be somebody that if you have to work 48 hours straight, you're happy of doing that.
Yeah, you are not sacrificing your happiness while spending the time with the person, which you will spend time a lot. So okay, cool.
Fuck yes, I mean, like a lot of time.
Yeah, and workers, would you start the Orbital Paradigm alone?
Yeah. I think it would make it probably harder. I realized that I had the push in me to go on no matter what, which I think it's important. Having a co-founder for me is something that is good for me and the company, but it's not the reason why I did the company. And I think for Victor is the same. He had already started his own thing, right? He didn't need me to start his own thing. So definitely, it makes it harder. I think the best thing of having a co-founder is finding somebody who can challenge you, and hire people who can challenge you and all that. Because I don't know if what I say is right. So if people don't counter me, I'm really stubborn, but I like being countered. I like testing the things I think and say. So the first person to do that is your co-founder.
Cool. Again, we broke another barrier to get into the industry as a founder. So now we have 3. So if there's anybody again asking themselves question, come on, just do it. Okay, great. And when we get back into the story, I want to understand where did you even start? How did it look like? Did you have any plan, or how did it look like on day to day, the first weeks of Orbital Paradigm after the establishment?
So I started the company. I told my boss at Sener I was trying to do this. I said, if at some point Sener thinks it's interested in participating somehow, let's discuss. They understood I had the need of trying this, and I was not at all. I would never try to compete and do the same thing that the company I was working for did. I think it would be even if it works out, it would be extremely bad practice. Space industry is a small industry,
I
and
also respect, and
being fair is extremely important. It's a business of a very few people, limited number of companies, and I do believe in being fair and correct as a value per se. And I would do it even in a huge industry, but especially in the space industry. It is really important. So, what I did is I started working nights and weekends. At
okay,
some
so you did it
point,
after work hours at Sener, right?
always, I bought another
Yep.
laptop. I never
Nice.
used anything from Sener. I mean, it wouldn't be fair. There's nothing I took from all that I did in Sener. I never took anything, never used anything. And I had another laptop. I informed the company. I made sure, do it cleanly, be fair. So at some point, I for a couple of months, I was doing the MBA, working at Sener, more than 8 hours a
yeah.
day, working on Orbital Paradigm and being a teacher at university. And, it was intense. Then I stopped being a teacher. I loved it, but I couldn't do it anymore. MBA was done. And I worked a lot. I did a lot of plans. We started with a small team we had. We started working on some technical stuff because I think it's important. Only PowerPoint doesn't work. You need to start doing something. It can be, a very detailed engineering model of things, like not physical model. I mean, modeling things in a simulator. You can start thinking of the cost of things, modeling the economic side, the project management of what you want to build. You can start talking to customers, but you have to do something besides a nice story that you write. It's also because it forces you to make it real. And for a lot of time, I told myself I would work on the company even if it was 15 minutes at night. Because it was either continuously pushing, and when I couldn't do more than 15 minutes, or it would have died. I had plans that were, let's say, quite different from what we're doing today. But the underlying vision for the future was exactly the same, which is industrialization in space and putting the infrastructure we need for expanding industry towards space, which is something I really believe into. And at some point, I found I spoke by chance with the first fund that believed in us, which is Demium. It's a fund that invested in very early talent. I could have told them probably I was doing chocolate cakes or in space or whatever. Meaning, not that I could have said something stupid. I mean, the content itself had to be coherent and make sense and be well worked, blah blah blah. But they didn't invest directly only on the content. It was more investing in the founding team. Okay, their thesis
Shout
was
out
very
to
early
them.
talent.
Shout
I
out to
love them.
Deimos.
I keep getting a lot of very good advice and tough love from Jorge, the founder of Deimos. Many things he said at the beginning that I didn't believe were true, and it took me a couple of years to get there. And he's a founder himself. He created what Deimos means. He then changed it, and so for me, that's also been a very good contact with what it means, what entrepreneurship means. Fun fact: way before Deimos, I I had done way before the investment and the discussion. I had done a hackathon weekend organized by Deimos. There was just go there, spend a weekend, and imagine you're building a company, pitch it, blah blah blah. So that was a fundamental step for me, because I thought, okay, I mean, building the pitch and understanding the basics is not so complex. Then reality is super complex, but the basics are basics. And then they invested, and I am extremely thankful to all our investors because of the trust they put in us. And we're very lucky with the investors. I speak to them a lot. They help us a lot. I think we are privileged in that. But yeah, Deming was the first one that trusted us. The second one was ID4. Also a huge shout out to them. So yeah.
Before we get further in the investment, I'm very curious, when you approached Deimos, were you still at your original idea of in-space robotics, if I got it right, instead of a Reentry vehicle, right?
It was, for me, so when I approached Deimos, the idea was in-space logistics, not with Reentry, with the Reentry part.
Yep.
I thought Reentry was already a closed market, even though I had worked on Reentry for many, many years. And then, in one of the things, we realized a bunch of things, but to put it simply, we realized that there is a need for Reentry and reuse. And one of the things I realized when I had to learn to stop being only an engineer is that you don't have to look at the problem only from very close. And that is the problem. And that's that when you're an entrepreneur, you can change the definition of the problem, and you can change what you do to achieve the same thing. So what we want to achieve is the ability of having industrialization in space. So in space logistics in a wide sense. And I think return and reusability are key for those vehicles that do that. It took me a while to get there. But basically, then I explained it to Deimos and to all the other investors, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." I mean, when you read about that, read about companies that they change.
Most of the companies
how they
change
do what
their
they do,
original.
and change is normal. And
no,
it's I think it's okay for me. The key is finding a path that makes sense in what you want to build. So it was more or less like that.
Yeah, you mentioned it took you a while to actually end up there, and now I want to dissect it a bit to help other engineers that are maybe in a circle trying to develop something that maybe is not the best idea from the commercial side of the thing. So I'm very curious, how did you end up at the Reentry product or the value proposition that you have right now?
Initially, we wanted to, let's say, sell the part of in-space logistics. Okay, let's call it widely in-space logistics. So space logistics means many things. Means basically moving things in space, fixing things in space, refueling things in space, inspecting things in space, blah blah, all that. Okay, we don't need to be way more specific, but my initial idea was there need to be something there that receives that and activities in that sense. Okay, let's keep it broad. And then I started thinking, who do I sell that to?
Yep.
Who's going to buy that? And I started pulling that thread. And I realized that a thing that I still believe, there needs to be a company can have a huge vision. Like, you can have a huge vision, but you have to start with something you can build and sell. Unless you have a huge amount of money, so you can start with something bigger that takes more time and sell it later, or
sell the vision.
And your like personal history justifies an investor putting a ton of money, and you say, look, I'm not going to sell anything for 5-10 years, but then I'm going to sell a lot of whatever it is, right? But I don't have a huge amount of money, unfortunately. I don't have the background, first time founder. I don't have a background that justifies investing 100 million or even 10 million right off the bat. It doesn't work like that, especially in Europe. Numbers in the US are 10x. So Europe. Initial numbers are 10x. Then Europe can do big things, but initial numbers are 10x. It's not AI in which the hype is so hyped that crazy things happen. So I started thinking, how do I sell the first thing that I sell? Who's going to buy that? And how many dependencies do I have before I can get to a business that can make revenue? Mm-hmm. You know, how many things need to happen between today and the day we're selling regular? And I started worrying about that, and I had a lot of conversations with people, and at some point I had a repeat conversation that was like, oh yeah, what, in space things are nice. Having things in orbit is going to be necessary, blah, 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 in the future. But right now what I want is for my payload experiment, a small thing to go and come back. And this happened a bunch of times. And I said, okay, but there's these options. I was like, no. What we need is, easy go up and down, and that and cadence is important. And so we started, with that. And then I realized, okay, it's not only that I need to go to space and return the content of my vehicle, is that if I go to space and I reuse my vehicle, I remove a big economic barrier. Because basically in space logistics, as of today, means I launch something, it does complex things, so it's very costly, okay? And it does something complex, proximity flight, blah, 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 and then you throw it away. And when I made all the numbers, the cost per advanced operation in space to justify building a satellite to do one thing and then throwing it away, or getting to the next one is really hard. It's in terms of distance, orbital distance, let's say, and it wouldn't be really feasible as of today. We need additional layers of things that need to be there to justify it. So, complexity, things that need things.
Expensive, yeah.
And how do you do that? And so I realized, okay, if I do something that goes to space and come back, not for humans, not for human-tended things, like easier, simpler, I can start getting revenue for experiments and payloads that need to go to space and back. And then I can build slowly to the next things that I believe, which is advanced operation in space. If you have a vehicle that can do advanced operation in space, it will be a complex and costly vehicle. So if you can reuse it multiple times, it's better because the economics of one service become way better, and maybe it unlocks that kind of market. And the only way to reuse that is to bring it back to Earth. So, hey, there's a path in what I'm seeing. So does that match with the skills?
Story.
So, and then you match it with the skills of the team. I've done Reentry for 10 years now. So it's a bit of that.
Super cool. And what I want to understand, you are a very organized person, as you mentioned. How did you structure the outreach? Who were you talking to? And did you have an idea, or were you just exploring the horizontals, the verticals, to try to find those that you just mentioned that told you, okay, there is something here?
So I am organized, but when I get into bouts of productivity, I'm like, a cannon. I just...
Okay, then we are the same.
I wrote to a ton of people. I tried to talk to a ton of people. I keep doing that. So if some of the listener, you receive a message from me, I really want to talk to you because I have some questions and you can help me. So please do answer.
Actually, there is a story. You were the same with me. You texted me, hey, Martin, you are going to this event. Should we meet? And then we didn't meet at the time, but you were still texting, and that's how we met. So pretty works. Yeah.
Yeah. And people are very busy. People have a ton of things to do. People have their own problems, but people like to help people. So if you're kind enough, and it kind of makes sense, and I'm not trying to sell you snake oil, and trying to understand things from you and get your help, you can establish a relationship. I'm happy to give something back if I can. I'm happy to help people without receiving anything. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So basically I did that. I asked a ton of questions and I was in a ton of conversations, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it went. And that's something I recommend. Try to get So when you're an engineer, you think that how things go is clear. This is decided this way. And of course, business is done A, B, C, then D, and it's not true. I mean, business is a mess. Strategy is based on very partial information, and so getting information is key. Who knows the market? The market, there's nobody that gives you, this is the market book for 2026, 2027.
Yeah, especially in this industry, it changes every year, right?
The market is basically the collection of points of view of all the people in the industry that try to get a benefit for themselves or the company they work for. So how do you know the market? There's nobody who's going to explain the market to you. So you have to ask a lot of questions and then make your own opinion. I do that a lot. I'm frankly a bit annoying, probably because I ask a lot of questions. I have my own ideas, but I try to get information and cultivate that point of view. So I did that.
Okay, amazing. And now when we are in a story, you just validated the demand by just doing a bombarding of so many people in the industry to figure it out what you need to do. And you did. And so now you need to build an actual reentry capsule. Where did you start? Did you have a napkin sketch, CAD model? Did you went on Google, try to go on YouTube, figure it out how to do stuff? Or what was the initial process of getting from, okay, we do this, until you actually did that a few months later?
So the first thing we did is understand what is the product we're building. Not everything that has an engine and four wheels is a Formula One car. Not everything that comes back from space is for humans or for cargo to stations. There are different things, and you have to understand how what you're building can be useful to a given segment and solve a bunch of problems. So we understood what we wanted to build. We wanted to start with something that has a given mass, a given cadence, and be launched in a given way and carry a given set of payloads and offer a given set of services. So that was that. Then this is not the first time I work on a reentry vehicle. I've worked on building reentry vehicles already. So I said, okay, I kind of know how to do these. So we have to do A, B, C, D. We have to size it this way, blah, blah, blah. We need this kind of thing. We need to simulate how it works to close the design. The first thing you have to do is close the design. If you are in deep tech and engineering, you're not sure you have a design that closes, meaning you have a ballpark estimation of everything and it works. Maybe you can make a few hundred million euros mistake and physics doesn't get fixed. Money fixes everything except not functioning physics at the moment, unless you find new physics. So I knew how to do that, and it was a way of progressing. When we were three in the company, I did part of the engineering. I did part of the simulator. I did part of navigation because it's something I do. I did part of the initial versions of the things we do for the guidance, navigation, and control system. So I was, engineering by night, COing by day. So it was. That's another advice. Don't do something when you start from scratch. Don't do something you know zero about in deep tech, because you need to have somebody who knows that a bit. I'm not talking about coding. Coding is a bit different. So
it's easy to change code. It's very hard to change a hardware product, right?
Definitely. And in any case, if you have to build from scratch a hardware or hardware engineering based product, there is a ton of learning, but not learning, oh, I did a mistake. No. Like academic learning of how do I could not build a nuclear plant. I'm an engineer, but it's totally different. So I would need to work with somebody who knows how to do that. So that's the kind of advice. And this allowed us to go fast. We initially started building what would be the second vehicle. We did an initial review with people from the industry, mission definition review. That's a super fast review you do with people from the industry that have been so nice to help us and do a review and point out problems and how to progress with some things. And this has been really useful. So thank all that are involved. I won't name them, but if they listen, they know who they are. Thank you so much. And then we realized we had to start with something easier because money, time, complexity. And we did what then became KID. We could have been.
Okay, so
we could have,
Kid came after you had your first
Yeah.
product, which is the mid tier complexity product, right?
We decided to do Kid at the beginning of September 2024. We finished mid-September. We finished qualification of Kid in August 2025.
For people that
End of
might not
August.
know, what Kid is or what is your product line, can you give us a bit of a zoom in on everything that you are working on?
Sure. So we want to build a vehicle that can carry, let's say we have two stable products in mind. The first one is called Capsule, 350 kilogram capsule that can carry 120 kilograms to the payloads to space, float a bit in orbit and come back for a few weeks to months. Before going to that, we had two intermediate steps. One is Kid. It's a small vehicle. It looks like, an investor told me it looks like a flower, a flower pot I stole to my mom. And he's totally right. It really looks like that. And it's like 40 centimeters diameter, 22.5 kilograms. We decided to complicate our life in two ways. We put customers' payloads inside. Would have been way easier not to do that, but the value would have been way less because we learned a lot of what it means to integrate payloads. So thanks to the customer that trusted us. And second, we put all the parts of the GNC of the autopilot, except the one that is related to actually switching on thrusters, because it has no thrusters. But we wanted to de-risk a bunch of those things. So it has the navigation, it has a version of the guidance, it managed the payload, it did a bunch of things. It's a small capsule. It looks like an espresso capsule, more or less, coffee capsule, kind of. And it was launched on a rocket, and it, in a rocambolesque way, it ended up working
We'll
quite
talk
well.
about it. Yeah, we'll talk about it in just a bit. Anyway, cool.
And that's the first demonstrator. Then the second one is going to be 150 kilograms to demonstrate our ability of steering a vehicle through atmosphere. Then Capsule stable product, and then there will be a bigger product that we're going to develop to have the ability of transporting more things, bigger things, and do more complex mission and landing back with retropropulsion and legs on a landing pad, hopefully in Europe.
Online, you said we design efficiently what the customer asks, nothing more. I would say that's very un-Silicon Valley. Can you explain me your product philosophy that you just nudged in a bit?
We want to use the technology we have to solve a customer problem, not find a customer for the technology we have.
Yep, important.
It's already hard enough as it is, and we make a ton of mistakes, but we try to keep that philosophy. So that's the meaning of what we said. And for instance, when we talk to customers, I continuously do that, and I try to understand, because they know way better than me, and sometimes you think some problems are problems, and they don't care at all. So we try to design the things that we have based on what we understand they need. And we use our technology because we think it's a good technology to solve those problems, but not the other way around.
No, I like the upside down approach. It totally makes sense, especially for European companies that have less capital, historically speaking, right? You cannot raise hundreds of millions in every beginning. So it totally makes sense. And once when we spoke for the first time, I think you mentioned that Kestrel is like a Fiat Punto of Reentry vehicles.
We try to keep it simple. We try to make it work. It's something to be used at high cadence. It's not something designed to fly to a station. It's not something to do fancy thing. At the beginning would be just, go to space, host things and come back. Then of course we're interested in what comes afterwards, and we're already working on that. It's in part of what we're developing. It's activity that we have, and we believe in that. But let's say we want to reach the ability of flying routinely with the most simple product we can have to do that, and build complexity atop that, but not go from complexity to simplicity.
Love
and even
Great.
wanting to do that, it's really complex. It's really hard to keep things simple. So
space is hard enough, don't make it hard from start, right? Okay, there are a few more aspects I want to understand about your product development, and among other things. How did you approach build versus buy? You partner with Pangea Aerospace for propulsion system, for example, instead of building it for yourselves. How do you think about this while building a product like you did?
Yeah. So the gimmicky way in which I try to explain it, especially to investors, is that we try to be cleverly integrated, not vertically integrated. What does that mean? There's this myth that SpaceX is SpaceX because they're vertically integrated. It's not true. And if you ask the people that worked at SpaceX at the beginning and you read about that, they built the things in-house that they could not find for a good price, good quality, good provider in time. Or the things they couldn't give, that would have meant giving too much control to a third party. But this is so much so that it is known that Elon Musk tried to buy rocket engines from Russia because they still have great rocket engines, and basically they got laughed at, and then they said, so fuck it, we build it ourselves. So we live of a myth that is not true. Then I've seen in the space industry that when you outsource engineering, you run a huge risk, which is the company to which you outsource engineering makes money not out of a product, but how many hours they charge you. So when you have a change in your design, which, spoiler alert, always happens, these guys will hit the brakes and say, well, now we have to reevaluate the change in scope, complexity, blah, 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 blah. It's a huge problem. And then if you outsource key elements, then you cannot evolve your system independently anymore.
And also communication, I think. You need to add on one more layer of somebody that you have to talk to, right? So if you miscommunicate, then
Definitely. And I can tell you at the beginning, when you start building a product, many things you don't really know. You rough out things and then you refine as you go. And sometimes you want to change. And the most horrible thing that can happen is that, I cannot change that because I have already paid my subcontractor to engineer the software this way or that one. So we like to work with companies that provide products. Pangea, there are many propulsion companies. Pangea is a great partner. They do propulsion from rocket propulsion to in-space propulsion. We found a great alignment and synergy for the moment in which the two companies are, the kind of product and technology they build. And we work very well together. I trust them completely, and I'm really happy that they wanted to work with us. Propulsion is one of those things that I think makes sense to buy, unless you want to do something very, very unusual. I don't know. Mainly because it is a very complex technology, and it requires quite a bunch of capital to do it. And one thing is to make a thruster that works once, and another is to make a propulsion system reliable, operational, and performing while you're building all the rest. So if you ask me, if you had infinite money, would you do it yourself? Of course. If I had infinite money, infinite time, infinite access to the engineering talent, I could shoot you to the moon, Martin, and come back in no time. But I don't have infinite money, infinite time, blah, blah, blah. It will live with constrained resources. So think of all the money that goes into companies building propulsion. Look at the time it takes to real experts to build that. Look at all the problems that there are when you build that. And now think if you want to do it yourself. And you can do it yourself. And if you can, or if that is your core technology, then it's a different thing. For us, it's not.
Great. Intelligently, vertically
cleverly integrated.
Cleverly.
So we buy product that we can buy. We don't do our own sensors, but we do our own software. The things we do are the things that are key for our technology and business, and we know that we have to do ourselves because we cannot go and buy on the market.
Okay, amazing. interestingly to understand your product development. Thanks for sharing that. And a few more aspects I really want to get into are customers. You got Kness as an anchor customer pretty early in your journey. Can you tell other engineers and founders listening here, how do you approach getting to sell your thing or product?
With a lot of effort. So we got Kness. Kness is one of those B2G things that we were talking before. So business selling to institutions and governments. They made a tender, which is the way that institutions procure the service they want. And we got contacted by our partners at Latitude in that time, and we said, "Oh, we can work together on this," and we worked together. So huge shout out to the people at Latitude for the work together and help on that. And basically, at that point, we already had a few contracts with ESA. We had already worked a lot of understanding what is it that you have to do if you want to fly space manufacturing payloads and a payload for experiments, microgravity activities. A lot of effort in understanding where the problems really were. So I think we did a good offer, and I am really thankful also to Kness that trusted us, despite us being probably one of the smallest companies that bid for that. But it went well. So we're really, really happy, and we are thinking of we're working on flying that activity from Kness on the first flight that they think it's useful for them. And I think, the combination with Latitude offers a very unique thing because it's a dedicated flight with very late access for a price that is very convenient based on benchmark on what is on the market. So I think in the end, it was a mix of things. It was a good offer, a good proposal, a good bid. It really showed that we are not working on building a fancy tech, but we're building things to offer a service. So that's what you have to have in mind. And then talk a lot to the customers. Selling is really hard. Basically, I talk to people in the industry and I say, I'm learning what it means to sell. And selling, I think, is mainly a trust effort. We're not in a business in which people pay €10 and if they don't like the subscription, they cancel it. We're in a business in which somebody will give us the outcome of a lot of effort, a lot of money, and a lot of time, something very valuable. So independently from the amount of money the company has, and we're not a super rich company, how big the company is, and we're not a huge company, you don't give your valued business items, possessions, anything to people you don't trust. So normally when we speak to customers, I tell them all the good and the bad. I tell them, look, we're doing this, that. We can offer this, that. If there's a problem, you don't like it, this can be done. I remember I told the customer at some point, hey, this is what we can offer. I think it's valuable for you. If you disagree and you want to contact our competition, that I won't name, but our competition, I know them. They're great guys. I can put you in contact. And if they can give you the service you need, then we cannot. I mean, I don't want I don't want people not to thrive. So I'm happy to put you in contact. We sold spots on Kid at a very low price, but our customers had to build the payloads to fly on Kid. So they put a lot of money, effort, and time. And whenever you do something like a reentry vehicle, it's a huge risk, technological risk, because it's very complex. It's like maiden flight of a launcher. Independently from how capable the team is, the stakes are really, really high. So it's hard to charge full price. There are limitations, there's risks, there's problems, there's schedule slippages. So what we do is the more with the risk, the higher the price is. But until we've de-risked 100%, we won't charge 100%. And then, I think, and I'm learning this, so if I don't do this right, I'd be happy to know. But if you go and talk to a customer and try to shove them a product or a service down the throat, it won't work. It's more like, hey, maybe right now it's not the right time. If I can help you, let me know. And, if the conditions are not what you need, let me know why, and we can see if we can work it out to make it worth your while. Everybody has problems, and a business is valuable if it helps customers solve a problem. So that's what I try to do.
Okay, amazing. Two last thing I really want to understand from you: investors or investment that you have mentioned previously. Tell me everything about how you went from we need money to actually closing the round. I know it took time and a lot of efforts, but I would love to tap into your brain and look into some patterns that we can share with the community here listening.
So also, I'm also learning. I've been an engineer 20 years, a founder 2 years. So lots of learning. I think I had to go the opposite direction with respect to what I usually would think. So first, again, trust. You don't give your money to somebody you don't trust. So I say the good and the bad. Then I think it's important to show that I know what I'm talking about. And I think I know what I'm talking about. So that normally checks out. We've been able to build a good team. I'm really, 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 really proud of my team. I would say something, so please, sorry, all the others, but this is the best team I've worked with. And I've worked with really, really good teams. So that normally checks out. I have done many mistakes. I think the biggest, there's two very big mistakes. First one, I have a vision in mind that goes 20 years in the future, and it's very big. And then I have steps to get there. And I started explaining as a good engineer, step one. And from step one, I go to step two. And from step two, and people, you guys on the investment side, you stop at step one because the brain doesn't follow. So you kind of go like, okay, so you're building step one. I'm like, no, it's just step one. But it doesn't matter. You've said step one. The rest is maybe. Okay. So right now, what I try to explain is, look, I'm building these. And to get there, we are step 1.5 or step one.
Yeah,
and
different
then that
minds,
works.
right?
And then that works. The investor is not building step one. The investor is helping you build a huge company. So do you have a vision for a huge company or not? If not, complex. Then, and that ties with the second thing I had to learn, which is, as an engineer, you will say, look, my estimation is these number point, this and that with this percentage of probability, and these problems can happen, so blah, blah. And I did the same explaining the business. Wrong. Investors understand that things will go sideways, there will be problems, and you won't get to the result you expect. But explain to me, where do I get if everything goes well? And then we'll speak. And if that is interesting, then we can keep talking. And then we will see how everything can go sideways. So I had to learn about that. And I realized that, I had also to build the explanation supporting that better. Because previously I was really focusing on details. And this is about the vision, and the details you will sort out. So it's not only about explaining the product instead of the business. It's about, explaining step one of the business with all its problems. Doesn't work. Do you have in mind something you think is going to be huge? Explain how and why. Explain how you will get there if everything goes well. And then explain how you think of the problems you can have and why you should be able to solve them. But it's really opposite to what an engineer will do.
Very good summary. Thanks for sharing that. And now I'm very excited to get into the last thing of the story, which is very recent, actually, just a few days ago, when your first demonstrator kit were on a launch pad in India. Walk me through the whole process. Why did you choose the PSLV launcher instead of the classical SpaceX choice, and how did it go? What you learned? How did it feel, and so forth? I'm very excited about this chapter here.
PSLV means Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. It's a very reliable, normally rocket, very well known in the industry, and it's been It's a very capable rocket that is launched from India, built by Israel, now commercialized by NSIL, and launched from India. So when I started looking at the flights for kid, I looked also at PSLV, but I really didn't manage to reach them. At that time, I got in contact with Right Space, huge shout out, and I was not expecting that they could offer such opportunity, but they did. They say, hey, we can fly you on PSLV. And it was a good combination of economic conditions and timeline and flexibility with the timeline. So SpaceX is very well known, works very well. They do a huge amount of things in a great way. And one of the things that happens is that when you fly on day X, 3 months before you have to be ready, and X months before everything needs to be closed, blah, blah, blah. But at that point, we wanted to fly earlier. We had basically opportunity to fly too early or too late. While PSLV aligned quite well, then there was a 3 months delay in launch. It's okay. I mean, I don't like it, but it's life.
Yeah.
And in any case, we got the flexibility to be able to launch. So that's how the opportunity came up. While we were working to launch in PSLV, PSLV had a failure with PSLV C61. We thought, okay, that's life, space life. They will sort it out. The important thing is that it doesn't slide to 3 years in the future to launch. But we thought, okay, typically when there's a failure, it gets corrected. It is unusual to get a second failure in a row in a similar topic. So basically, we took the risk. We learned a huge amount of things, and this is not evident to people outside the industry. Going from a PowerPoint to a demonstrator to a test element to a prototype is complex. Going from a prototype to something that is qualified to fly on a launcher is at least 20 times more complex. Because basically you cannot build whatever you want, how you want. You have to build something that functions respecting a very strict set of rules and go through a set of tests that is costly, complex, and time consuming. And if you fail, you're basically screwed because you have to go back and fix it. So on top of that, we do something that is quite unusual in the industry. So I can count the companies that have flown thermal protection systems, the kind of antennas we were using, in the kind of regimes we were flying, the kind of materials, how the processes, how to use those, how to integrate payloads that had certain characteristics. So it was not straightforward. And I think I wrote it somewhere. You look in books, there's no book, or the books tell you the basics. You look in papers, and papers, you have a small picture, then you start zooming in because you think, oh, wow, there's some valuable information there. And then you get a pixel this size and you have no clue what they're doing. So we had to sort out a lot of problems, making sure that we could survive testing and be approved for launch by a third entity that won't make you any favors. So for everybody outside the industry, investors, companies that have flown are not the same as companies that are proving that they're able to fly, or companies that are proving that they've tested something to fly are not better, but more ahead than those that are still getting there, right? So, because the step in complexity is huge.
And regarding the flight,
in a way,
regarding the flight,
so.
Tell us more. How did it go for the people that don't know? It happened on January 12th after some times of rescheduling. Yep.
So basically, the launcher had a non-nominal flight, meaning it failed. How a launcher functions, it goes upwards, then it accelerates sideways. And when it does accelerate it to orbital velocity, basically it's like throwing a stone from a very high altitude very, very, very fast, and it doesn't fall ever. It keeps turning around the Earth. So what we should have done is we mounted kit on the rocket, connected the cables, took a picture. We're very happy, came back to Europe. And the launcher should have gone up, accelerated sideways, and once in orbit, it would have released its payloads. Then at the end of the launch, it would have executed a maneuver to reduce its velocity with kit still coupled, and then started falling to Earth at 550 kilometers of altitude. And then at 500 kilometers of altitude, it should have separated us. We should have fell towards Earth, and then you hit the atmosphere and do the space reentry flight. What happened is that while going up and accelerating, the rocket failed. It started tumbling, and it fell back to Earth from an altitude of 500 kilometers at lower velocity, but entering more vertical in the atmosphere. And we were watching that, and I saw the launcher tumbling, and I thought, oh, this is just a glitch of telemetry. It was not. And then we thought it was done, basically.
How did it feel, actually, being in your skin at that specific moment?
It was... I thought, okay, first thing is help the team not feel everything is lost. That was my first thought, actually. I mean, they're grown-up people, but you work so hard on something, and then you don't know if it works or not. It's even worse than seeing it not work, because you basically don't know. And that was my first concern, because they put so much into that. And then I started thinking, okay, how do we deal with this going forward for investment, technological development, customers? But the first thing was the team. So I spoke to the team, and the team was like, "Yeah, well, thank you." And then Bruno, one of our software engineers, went to check the telemetry, and he told us, and he's a very calm guy. So he basically said, "Oh well, we have telemetry." And I thought he was kidding me, but it was not. And we saw it had survived. So we think that when the rocket fell back towards the atmosphere, the heat was enough to activate the mechanism that opens the separation ring, which is the way the kit is mounted on the rocket. So the separation ring, based on what we see today, it survived those conditions. And then when the temperature hit the limit, it opened up. We got shot out of the rocket. And basically, we did our re-entry mission. We got 3 minutes of data. Since we didn't do the part outside the atmosphere, we didn't get the customer's data, and I'm really unhappy about that, and I'm really sorry about that. And yeah, okay, it's not our fault, but when we speak to our customer, we sell them a service end to end. We don't tell them, look, now you go buy a launch. It's us. So it's our responsibility in the end towards the customer. So I'm not happy about that. But as I said, in a very rocambolesque way, because the launcher failed, and people will think, oh, you got lucky. Well, I don't wish upon anyone to see that the one thing you built with $1 million and a year and a lot of effort doesn't get to function because the launcher fails. But then within that bad luck, we got lucky because the conditions to open the ring happened. And then there was a lot of good design. The ring worked properly. The ring didn't break due to access to loads during entry. The ring separated us properly. Kit switched on. Kit survived re-entry. Kit kept the temperatures inside the vehicle at the right temperature, at the right level. Kit transmitted data, and we were able to reconstruct the trajectory.
That was the thing I was very curious about. How did you make Kit so damn tough? If I got the numbers right, I think you reached more than 28 Gs. How did it survive? What is your, not secret sauce, but why did it survive in the end?
So, the nominal Mach at entry would have been 24-ish. So let's say the thing is, when you re-enter from an orbital flight, you re-enter at 7.8 kilometers per second at a very shallow angle. So at an angle with respect to horizontal, which is roughly less than 2-3 degrees. We'd re-entered at 6 point something kilometers per second at 20 degrees angle. So the conditions were way harsher because you heat the atmosphere, the dense part of the atmosphere at much higher speed, and basically there is a very strong break. You break through the atmosphere very harshly. So we kept analyzing, and actually we saw that the acceleration we got was more than 33 times, almost around 35 times the acceleration of gravity.
Crazy.
The nominal would have been 14. So if I didn't know what's behind it, I would think this is bad engineering because it's oversized. It's not. It's that at the beginning, when we started designing, we were assessing the option of launching on a suborbital flight. And a suborbital flight would have meant more acceleration. So kit was designed to withstand up to 40 Gs of acceleration with some safety margin on top. Because that was the worst case if we had to change from an orbital launch to a suborbital launch. And we didn't want to constrain our options. So it was a little tougher than expected. And the heat we got was 30% above nominal, but still within range because we designed up to 1.4 megawatts per square meter, and instead of 1 point something, that is what we should have had. So the mechanical design and the design of the capsule was meant to withstand what it withstood. And then we had a set of technological solutions, and we tested our own thermal protection material and some more solutions that work very well because we got link from the two transceivers on board. We know the GNSS established link, but couldn't get a solution. We know the temperatures inside and on the skin of the vehicle under the thermal protection. Our navigation functioned. We know that the onboard avionics functioned. So it went well.
Well, anyway, congratulations again. I think you're one of the few companies that float with the Indian launcher, and at the same time, you are one of the, a few Reentry companies that are European that actually, I can say that this mission was partially successful. So again, congrats there. What I want to understand now is why you're going from this point after this learning, after this flight, and what is your vision for short and long term for the company?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So yeah, we're happy. I think we have demonstrated that our reentry, that we're capable of designing, developing, qualifying, flying reentry vehicle that works well on a maiden flight. And if you look it up, it's I'd say it's uncommon at best. So I'm really proud of what the team did there, and I think there's huge value because basically we can show to our customers that we're able to transmit data, we're able to keep them at a temperature that is convenient for them, so below 30 degrees despite re-entering. We're able to design something that resists re-entry. And that my main point is to prove to our customers that we can be trusted with knowing what we do when we fly back from space their payload. And we validated a bunch of technologies, a bunch of tools that we have in the company for trajectory, aerodynamic design, thermal design, all that, thermal sizing. So yeah, that's key. And then the future, we're doing Learn to Fly, which is our next mission. It's going to have a similar flight profile, but showing a controlled re-entry with propulsion, working with Pagea propulsion. And popping a parachute to splash down, hopefully in the Atlantic. We really want to re-enter in Europe. Depends on the launcher. We're working for that. And these will be 150 kilograms with roughly 25 liters pressurized payload capacity in a controlled environment and some unpressurized capacity. And why 150 kilograms? Blah, blah, blah. We are building. When we do an MVP or a demo, we build the smallest and simplest possible object that we need to demonstrate the key technology we want to demonstrate. We're not going directly to the final product. We're focusing on demonstrating controllable re-entry.
Okay, awesome. And how do you see the industry evolving within the reentry segment? You have Varda, exploration company, Atmos in Europe. Where do you see yourself within this forming ecosystem of companies?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. I would say we aim at being a company that flies space transportation vehicles routinely to space and back, with a growing size and way more complex services in the future, supporting what we believe is going to be the in-orbit economy and infrastructure and industry. I would say we're not going to fly. We're not aiming at any moment in time at flying humans. I think our path goes in a different direction, very different direction. We are not aiming at refurbishing stations. Our plans are not in that direction. Of course, it's at some point we routinely re-enter and we get asked to do that. We're happy to do that, but it's not the main thing we're planning for. Even though it's an interesting segment, but it's very political, very complex. There's safety of human life, so it's a bit of a different thing, right? Something we can explore, but it's not our main goal. I would say the main thing is to make re-entry vehicles work first. And then you can move from there. I think there is a growing interest in the world for this kind of capacity, but there is a great filter, which is who can make re-entry vehicles that work. It's very much like launchers. There's a huge interest who can make launchers that work with time, money, and technical complexity. So that is my first question. Let's build something that can re-enter. We made Kid. Now we need to do the next one. Kid worked, so small check. Now we have to do a bigger check.
Yeah, it has to work. It either works or not, similar with the launchers that you just mentioned. So cool. Thank you for sharing your opinion here. And thank you so much for sharing your story and insight. It had been an amazing 1.5 hour of hearing you here. So thank you so much for joining here. I have 3 last questions that I call quick fire round questions that are a bit outside of the story, but I really want to get your opinion on those things. So let's get into that. First one, you have said, I want to make money. Hopefully we'll get rich. Let's say it without guilt. Why do European founders feel guilty about that when Americans don't? What do you think?
Because we're not educated for that. I think there are a bunch of. I think there are. I think these ties into culture. I think I might be wrong, so apologies. I think we don't have a culture of success. We're not educated for success. As I said, I think we're educated. Manager is a success. No, manager is executing some things. It's a very good role, but it's not creating something new and success. And so there's not that. I think there is a part of maybe it's tied into the Catholic education or religious background in Europe, that being too successful is not a good thing. So I think it comes from that, and I think in the United States they have the story of the self-made person that really helps.
Fair point.
Believe. We don't. We lead with the problems. Oh, I want to do something very complex, very valuable, blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's really hard. And the Americans will tell you, how do you plan to do it? Is it worth it? So I think it goes in that kind of, it's a whole set of things related to culture and education.
But you're a European. So why did you have the opposite opinion than the others?
I don't know. I gave a lot of thought to that. I would say I have a lot of ambition. I am aware of how hard it is and where things might go sideways, but I think it's worth it and I want to do it. And I'm not doing what I'm doing for money. I do it because of the value it has.
Of course. Cool. Good answer. Next one. How do you see the actual future of the European space industry from this point, based on where we are right now?
Very good. Going better. Still not as big as it should be. I think it's clear that China and the US are pushing strongly for space because it's related to dominance and resources and the future. And we still have a lot to do. But I think institutions know that it's worth it. They're doing a lot. I think the industry is getting more and more capable. a lot of people are doing a great job. I really believe that there must be a huge effort in making everyone understand why it's something that deserves
More
resources and
attention.
attention.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. Next question. What do you think is the biggest lie investors tell founders, especially in space tech or deep tech?
Fuck. The biggest lie. I think the biggest lie is that you don't get invested because they think you won't succeed. That you guys don't say that.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
I mean,
Interesting opinion.
why would you not invest in someone if you don't think that if you think that someone will succeed? If you meet someone, you think this guy's going to succeed. I don't care about the rest. He's going to succeed. You will invest, unless we're talking we're Series A or Series B, and you have to look at the balance sheet and all that. Not talking about that. It's early stages. Do you believe that guy is going to succeed in the market in which he is, in the big vertical? Not doing AI or software as a service, but in hard tech, deep tech. Do you think that the founder will succeed because he's got what it takes? Invest. If you don't, it's just you don't believe it will succeed. He or she will succeed.
No, I actually agree with you here. It's based on also, it's a lot of feelings, to be honest, and not that many checkboxes if you are in a very early stage. And if there is an answer come back later, it's because the conviction isn't there. But that might change, right? But you're actually totally right.
It might change, and it's okay, and it's fair. It's okay, but it's not. You cannot say it like that, But I would ask, please, investors, tell why. Look, I don't think you got the right team. I think you missed these. I think the market is not right. Just say something, because I think good founders, and I try to remove myself, but a good founder will try to work to solve the problems that impede getting investment. So if you don't get a good feedback, you cannot do the work to become better.
I will note that down and I will try to do it more. Sometimes it's very hard. After 15 minutes of talking with somebody you haven't met, it's pretty hard to build up the trust and stuff. But I totally agree with you. Honesty is good for everybody, I think, here. So yeah. Anyway, the very last question. You had around 20 years of aerospace career. What do you think is the hardest habit from established company or corporate life that you had to unlearn as a founder?
You need to take a lot of risk. But taking risk that means, do I select A or B? And you cannot make a meeting to prepare a meeting and do 3 months of analysis and then spend 2 months negotiating the contract, blah, 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 blah. Basically, you have a week and you have to decide A or B. And there are very good frameworks that you have to internalize, like, is this a life or death decision? If this is wrong decision is death, then hit the brakes. Let's look at it. If it's not, let's think of the path ahead and select the one we believe today is the most convenient, and let's think of a plan B if push come to shove and we have to change. But in traditional industry, everything takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of people deciding, and nobody's taking a single decision and a single, let's do this and then we will see. But at some point, it's about that. You do your basics, and if the basics check out and it makes sense, just go forward.
Okay, awesome answer. And just to close this talk, Francesco, there are two groups of people watching this. I think the first one would be the corporate aerospace engineers thinking about leaving or doing something else. There are where you in 2023. I have responsibilities, right? And I need to do something. And secondly, there are early stage founders grinding through their first years, watching competitors raise millions while they are bootstrapping, for example, in Europe, which is very common, wondering if they're moving fast enough or doing it right. And both groups are very scared to do the next step. What is the one thing from this episode you would like them to take home or work in the next day?
A lot of people will tell you that it's not good, it's not working, blah, blah, blah. And you will face a lot of objections, a lot of problems, and you will compare. I do compare myself a lot to what others are doing, and And I think it's normal. I try to compare and understand where we are, what we can do better, blah blah blah. And it's really normal to be worried and because the life of the founder is basically solving problems. It's not having fun. It's solving all the shit things that happen. You have to solve them, and you have to establish a direction when there are no directions. So yeah, well, that's life. My point is, it is worth it. And nobody who succeeds has an easy life. Nobody who gets somewhere has an easy life. And you don't know what other founders are going through. And if you want support from someone, ask another founder, because most founders are willing to help. So just go on.
Cool. Amazing. Actually, 2 hours. This is the longest episode of the podcast.
That's
so
because
thank
I
you so much.
speak too much. I'm sorry.
No. I actually want to make it because that's how I felt the conversation was going. So thank you so much for spending 2 hours with me, sharing your
It's been a pleasure.
thoughts, perspectives, opinions. And I hope we will at least push one person, either from the corporate world or from the university, to get into something and just build it. We need it right now in Europe. We need more crazy people like yourself, in a good way, to actually
Or bad.
build something in the industry, so we as a continent can actually be at least more measurable with the other powers that are leading the industry right now. So again, thank you so much, and I loved it. I had so much fun. Hope you too.
My pleasure. Thanks, Martin.